This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.
Hi, I'm Charlie Konecki, the acting chair of the Public Safety Building Committee for the town of Southampton. It is March 7th. It's about 4:32 in the afternoon. The meeting's been called because we're going to be doing reformation in the meeting. We're sort of going to stagger this a little bit. What I'd like to do is go around the room so we have introductions from everyone. I'll start with myself. I'm Charlie Konecki. I live at 146 Valley Road in Southampton and have been in town my entire life, and I've been on this committee for a dozen plus years.
Hi, I'm Cindy Palmer. I live at 71 Glendale Road. I represent seniors and the Council on Aging for the purpose of this committee.
And my name is Renee, also Maureen Groden, and I am on the select board, the liaison from the select board, and I'm also liaison to 4 other committees, but for here, I'm here as a select board member. Are we going?
Done. Done.
I'm John Warren. I live at 230 College Highway. I've been in town since 1936. And I represent the Historic Commission.
I'm Bill Barham, retired fire chief, been involved in the fire department since the early 70s. And I live on Pleasant Street, 37.
All right, Ed.
Ed Gibson, I'm the town administrator, and I'll be an ex officio non-voting member of this committee.
Hi, I'm Mark Darnold. Been in town for 35 years. Yes, I'm an at-large committee member and volunteering for the first time, and have extensive background in civil engineering.
Chief?
Go ahead. Rich Vasoli, 6 Friar Road, Deputy Chief of Fire Department. I've been on the department 28 years.
Would you be able to spell your name, sir, so I could do it for the minutes? Rich? How do you spell your last name?
F-A-S-O-L-I.
Thank you.
Ian Illingsworth, Police Chief. I've served the town for about 27 years as a police officer.
Christina Manson, 40 Rattle Hill. I'm an at-large member and also a member of the Historical Commission, although I don't represent them on the committee.
Barbara Szymborski, 10 Golden Circle. I'm here representing the Finance Committee, and that's it.
John O'Shea, 10 Middle Road. I've been a resident since 2010. Before that, I worked for the Springfield Fire Department, and I had some involvement with one of the stations that they built.
John Workman, Fire Chief, 13 Belanger Road. Looking forward to something to come from the many years that we have been on the committee. So it's nice to see a big group.
I'm Sarah Stein, 9 Cold Spring Road. Lived in town for 6 years. So I am a member at large, and I also serve on the planning board here in town.
Welcome, everybody. I'm assuming the ones that have been appointed have been sworn at by the town clerk, and we're beyond that.
I haven't.
Okay, then I would at this point in time just advise you that you probably can't vote until you're sworn in. Anyways, that said, the first thing we need to do is reform this committee. We need a nomination for chair. This is a very lucrative position, held in high esteem. You get to hear the many voices all night long, even when you think you don't hear them. I am not going to be chair. Let me be blunt about this.
Charlie, I'm wondering if we can just make that the second agenda item, and if you could just, and other people, John, both chiefs, just give the new folks here a little bit of information about where the committee stands, give a little historical perspective and, bring us up to today in terms of the committee. I think it'll be easier to have a little bit of grounding before people think about, leadership of the committee.
All right.
Some of these people are new, and we're so grateful that people stepped up, especially people who haven't been on committees before. It's kind of a little intimidating, I would imagine, to say, hi, here I am, first committee, and you want to be chair.
It's called a field promotion. It works, trust me.
Oh, we'll see. Can you give a little bit of update, though?
All right, now let me throw the fire chief under the bus. Why don't you give your spin on what you believe this committee should be doing and what has happened?
I think you'd be better at it, but certainly it's been a committee longer than I've been part of it. And I know that a lot of work has been done. I know that some of the problems in the past have been, where do you place it? What land is available? How do we keep it in the center so that we don't really change the dynamics of insurance and equal access to different areas of the town? When we had originally gone through and gotten, we denoted in back of the fire station the last time we really had forward progress. We'd done a study for that had come out and put it in front of town meeting, which was a $10 million package put in front of town meeting. That package was considered Taj Mahal. I think that it was a package that included a lot of things to make it fit into the community that we perhaps didn't need, but aesthetically would make it more beautiful. The problem is that as time goes by, the stations don't get any newer. The cost of construction doesn't go down at all. And so I think the challenges that we have are really to pull something together. I think for the police chief and myself, I believe that we really would like to see almost anything come together, even if it was a barn that was metal siding. I think that we're just anxious to get out of the buildings that we're in that are really not good places of function. I know that there's a lot of concerns just with some of the new requirements for exhaust extraction and those kinds of things that are now a Massachusetts requirement. And I know, for our building, we're pretty deficient in a lot of things that make it a safe workplace for firefighters. One of the biggest concerns for firefighters these days is cancer. And we're living in a building where you've got all the carcinogens of the fires that you go into, but you also have the carcinogens of the equipment around you. So that's sort of my personal perspective. I think that just to see headway is a good direction for us, wherever that happens to be. I think that one of the things that I think will make it more successful, which I think Rainey had touched on at one point, was just to get the community involved. So it's not just firefighters, it's not just police, but it's really council on aging. It's really planning committee. It's some people that have civil engineering type degree. I think that we need finance committee. We need the community behind this. We need community input to it. I think we're one of the last towns to really build a modern station. And I think that there needs to be a commitment from the town to do this. And so it's good to see everybody here together. As far as the detail of what we've gone through, you could probably answer to that since you've worked with that more than I. But that's sort of my subjective overview.
I have a question. Do you like the present location?
Whether it moves, a half mile this way or a half mile that way, I don't really. I think it needs to be in the center of the community.
Can I add to that, John?
Sure.
Thanks. The town did agree on a town meeting to purchase additional land behind the fire station, and there was high hopes of actually constructing a public safety complex back there. There's a tremendous amount of ledge, though, and so it was a problem, and that drove the price up dramatically along with what Chief Workman said about some of the, like, bells and whistles or whatever. But the building is clearly about Civil War age, and it's woefully inadequate and unsafe for the current purposes of our fire department, and they deserve much, much better. So the land, we have more land in the back there, but, but it did not go in front of, I mean, it wasn't approved by the town, and I think it was almost exclusively because of price.
What year?
I think people agree that we need one yesterday.
What year did it go before town meeting, do you remember?
2015.
2015.
Chief, Illingsworth?
Relative to, just to kind of go off what Chief Workman spoke of, these buildings were not designed as public safety buildings. That was an old schoolhouse that was adapted to a fire department, and the police department is a town hall that has been adapted into a police department, but these adaptations are makeshift. They're not intended for their purposes. And as a result, we're not in code. There's situations, it's not efficient as far as energy efficiency. We have rooms that we're using at the current town hall that don't need to be as big as they are, but it's just a space that we have to acquire because that's what we have there. I think that I personally, anybody on this committee or anybody in the community that would like a tour of the police department, I'd be happy to give them a tour so they can actually see what we're dealing with in some of the circumstances and how these particular rooms are not intended for their purposes. Like Chief Workman said, the rooms have to have certain functions. For instance, in a police department, you have to have an evidence or a property control room. That property control room should have adequate lighting. That property control room should have humidity, stuff for humidity so things don't get, while they're in our custody, don't get damaged through by rusting and so forth. Ours is in a closet with lighting that you can't even really see. Then you have to bring a flashlight in there to see stuff. We have offices, and if you've been in the old town hall, the main corridors are just very large corridors, and we're heating those corridors. That takes up a lot of this. My heating bill is, I want to say, this last bill was over $1,000. For a building that just doesn't need to be heated like that. But it's just a lot of open space that's not intended to be a police department. So we're making do, but I can, I would be happy to give anybody here a tour, any member of the public a tour that would like to see the police department, and I'm sure John would too.
Absolutely. Bring your boots.
And I'll just add that that building was built in 1900 or thereabouts, and we just had an envelope study done of the exterior. And there are so many improvements that would be needed just to bring the building to some level of safety that right now there's a subcommittee of the, I think, historical group that are looking at prioritizing and bringing in front of the town, where do we start on that building. In addition, the town purchased a small amount of land where the old Grange used to be. If people have been around for a while know where that is. Part of it was because regardless of what ends up happening with that building, the police department, the hope is that that would allow for a septic, system or something there, and egress to Route 10 directly from whatever place was there. So I just wondered if the historical people would like to say a couple of things, because I think both of these buildings are in a historical district. There's a lot of concern in Southampton around historical buildings and so forth. And I just think it's important to say that, that was a huge consideration in these past attempts to manage or do something about public safety complexes, the fact that these are both historical buildings. And then there's another perception, which might be a little bit negative, that I've heard personally, that we just keep buying land but don't do anything about it. But there was a good reason for both of them at the time. So I don't know, Dawn and Christina, if you want to say anything about the historical nature of this?
Well, I just comment, that's an opinion that I've heard, just like you have,
yeah,
of somebody that's really uninformed. when the purchase, there was a, the purchase of this piece of property was pretty inexpensive, and he gave us access to Route 10 and it also was perkable. And whereas you get this big parking lot around the old town hall, it just plain doesn't work. So if you're gonna save the building, you better have them far enough ahead so you know what you're gonna do about septic. And that solves that problem, and we own it, and nobody can take it away from us. Same way up behind the fire station. I think we paid $30,000 for a piece of land. You can't buy anything for $30,000 in this town anymore, property-wise. But it gave us, and we still have it, a lock on a septic field that's tested and approved. So we know that if the fire station did end up across the street, it would be, that problem is solved. It also is available for the town hall, which may be dealing with an issue to expand capacity in the future, and the property's there. And in each case, it was a very modest amount of money that was spent.
I agree.
And there's still valuable assets. It would be crazy to sell any of them off until we get some of these major infrastructure problems resolved.
Sure. I'm on the subcommittee for the Old Town Hall as well, and I think the town generally agrees that of the two historic buildings, that one is the priority for repurposing. It's a beautiful building and could be partially renovated or fully renovated to its original condition. Until a new safety complex is developed and until the police have a permanent home, not a lot of work can be done on that. So that's another reason that there is some urgency in having a new complex developed, so that before that becomes a liability to the town, that can be repurposed and renovated. This building, the current fire station, has been dramatically altered, and that has less historic value than the old town hall. So given expense and so forth, it is my opinion, I'm not speaking for the historical commission, that the old town hall should certainly be a priority for renovation over this one, over keeping this building.
Would you like an overview of what the committee's accomplished in the last 12 years? Some, well, 14 years ago probably, the select board moved forward to establish a committee. This committee has changed formats probably 4 times now, Ed. This will be the 4th time. But anyways, there's been this evolution based on trying to get this to happen. And the first charge of that committee was to evaluate all town properties to see where we could locate a public safety complex. And the charge from the select board was to look for town-owned properties, not to look at purchasing land anywhere. We went through, and I sent each and every one of you a copy of the report of all the different properties that we evaluated and why and what our conclusions were relative to this. We learned during this process that one of the handicaps or restrictions that the town had to do with fire insurance. If we locate the fire department outside of this half-mile radius of where it presently is, we will impact residents' fire insurance rates. Because if the fire department is moved farther away from them, then their rate will increase. If we move it closer to somebody, it doesn't seem to affect them, but that's insurances. So that pretty much brought us into this cone of here in the center of town, this is where we need to look. Again, we were charged with looking at town-owned properties. There's very little town-owned properties that don't have deed restrictions on them that we can just use. In fact, there really is only 2 large parcels, here and behind the landfill. Because we bought open space behind the landfill over by the golf course to act as a buffer in case there was a plume of influence coming out of the landfill, so it wouldn't go on the private property. Our highway department utilizes that area right now as a gravel operation and storage for stuff of that nature, which has worked out well for them. But it's also outside that half-mile radius of being in the center of town. So we focus back on this parcel. What we discovered on this parcel, and I wish I was making this up, but I can't believe this. There were 12 intersecting deeds on this property.
Now, when you say this property, you mean this property right
I
here,
mean
the town hall?
this section of town hall, fire station, the parking lot, the property behind there was like 12 different intersecting deeds that were acquired at certain times. Then we discovered that there was a county road that ran through this building that was never abandoned. So the committee had to have a public hearing with the, what do you call it, the Hampshire commissioners to vote to basically abolish the roadway so that it became land owned by the town. Then we had to take and survey out this entire property as one, and this went through town meeting votes and select board and all the rest of that, and vote to take and establish a straw deed and then sell it back to the town of Southampton so that the deeds, it has this entire property as one parcel. So we were cleaning all that up to try to get this so that we had workable land over there that didn't have overlapping deeds and stuff that would be a real nightmare if we ever applied to try to get grant money or loans or anything of that nature. Then we realized that, and this was always going in front of the select board, that we needed some land to take and put a septic system in. And the only land that we saw that was available was on that hillside over there. So we actually went out and did perk tests and everything else and purchased that land so we'd have capability of putting a septic in. We looked at other lands in the town at the same time, and we looked at properties that we could purchase, because as things changed with the select board, they started asking us about lands that we could purchase. So we sent out letters to different property owners who have, by the greater majority of them, have come and gone now. The properties have been sold to other people and that as this went on. But we never got into the direction of actually purchasing anything.
Other than the Grange.
Other than the Grange. And the Grange came up because we knew the septic system at the police station was questionable, and the price seemed right to just buy that parcel. It would give us that access point and give us some land mass to take and put a septic system in if we needed to. So we encouraged that to happen. But we recognized that the town hall, the old town hall police station, didn't have a large enough footprint to put a police and fire department there. The land's just not large enough for that. And if we tried to go out further, we'd be going into wetlands, and that wouldn't help us any. So that's why we kept rolling back to this. So then the committee felt, and the select board felt, that the best thing to do now is to move forward at town meeting to try and build a public safety complex. And we sent out information and moved forward, and the town looked at the 10 millions and decided that was out of the realm of what they wanted to pay for. So after that was voted down, the committee basically went into an idle mode. Nobody was really sure which way to go with things like this. That's why my hope, my personal hope, is by re-energizing, bringing new people into this committee, this thing will start to move forward again. And I have no problem helping, but I don't want to be the chair. Because I think it needs fresh eyes to do this.
Can I ask a question and see if other people have questions too? I wanted to ask you, when I first moved to town, there was a house to the north of the fire station, and I know that a car went crashing into it.
Yes, Albert Miles's house. Bill Barkham was responsible for that mess.
What happened to that house and who owns the land now?
The town owns the land,
Mhm.
and the house was torn down because evidently when you take an Oldsmobile and you go through the front door and you go out the back door, there ain't a whole lot left on the first floor.
Yeah.
So it sort of led to the conclusion that, and there was no reason to try to fix the house up because there was no septic because it was dumping in the brook. And there was no structure there to salvage.
And it currently is a wetlands area, right?
Actually, where the house is not a wetlands.
Okay.
But beyond it, yes.
And how much acreage is that parcel?
That's an unfair question. I wouldn't possibly be able to tell you, but remember exactly how much that is.
So this is just on the other side of the current fire
Yeah, fire
station?
station.
Yeah.
On Route 10?
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, this is one of those classic
Was that an
stories.
official purchase of land by the town of that property once the house was demolished?
You're asking me?
He said you were around then.
Very good, Brady. That's how you dump it on, Bill. That's the way I've been doing it
All
for
I know
years.
is it took the piano out with it, so.
So I just wanted, can I just say,
I think he donated it to the town. I
So
think
it is owned by the town now?
it
Yeah.
is owned, but my understanding was wetlands, but anyway. So I just wanted to just say a couple things contextually in terms of what else is going on. So I do think there's a lot of public support in this town for public safety complex, but I do think that we have to really spread the word and rally support and keep the public informed and you know, our chiefs do a great job and we owe it to their departments and to their safety and health to actually do this and to really move forward on this now. I will say that, you know, there are somewhat competing demands, but I don't feel that it's one or the other. Just so you know that there's a lot of energy right now for a greenway. We're just about to purchase the greenway rail bed. And then we have, I think, 6 million on MassDOT. Is that that we are standing to get for the construction of the greenway?
Yeah, I think it's actually just under that, like 5.9, yeah.
Right, and then we've gotten, not me, the grants committee's done a fabulous job. Ed's part of that committee, and they've gotten 2 $100,000 grants towards the greenway. And it came up as the #1 survey in the master plan survey that went to the town was the greenway. So there's a lot of energy. We also had a gentleman in town by the name of David Parsons that died last year and donated $2.5 million for the construction of a senior center. So there's about to be a feasibility committee formed. There's a catch a little bit in the will that we have 2 years from the date of his passing to come up with a final plan, which we do interpret as possibly in front of the voters and approved. But we're getting clarification on the amount, getting clarification on the final plan definition. But obviously, there's a lot of energy and enthusiasm about potentially having a new senior center. $2.5 million is not going to build it, that's for sure. But there is about to be a committee formed, a feasibility committee, to hire a company to look at options. So I just want to let you know there are a lot of exciting things happening in town. I don't see it as being either or situation, but I just wanted you all to know, if you didn't know.
I think one thing that really needs to be done is in some way townspeople, to garner that support, see the condition, learn the condition of the 2 buildings, and I wonder if there's some sort of informative campaign that could take place in the form of a video or tours or something so that people really understand how deficient they are.
Yeah.
Sure.
That's a good idea.
And I think that's a big part of this.
So, at this juncture, let me interrupt. We gotta do a little housekeeping. Don has the minutes from the last meeting. The problem is, there's very few of us from the last committee that were at the last meeting. So Don, have you submitted those? Because I don't remember seeing them.
Well, I have a copy of them here. It's the minutes from November 15th.
So how about if you give me those minutes, and what I'll do is scan them and email them to all the membership, so at the next meeting we can vote on them.
Sounds like a good idea.
Okay?
Can I just ask if anybody here has any questions about anything that's been said, or explained, or proposed so far?
I have a question about what you said, reading about this senior center. Is it off the table to incorporate a senior center into a public safety complex?
I don't think that's been, there's nothing that's been decided about that yet. I'm part of the group that's been, hasn't formed any kind of committee yet, but we've gone to look at Salt Hadley Senior Center, we've gone to look at Hadley, and the group is going Thursday to look at Urban. But I don't think anything has been decided one way or another about that. They're kind of in, not exactly the same boat. I think public safety is a little bit further ahead on that, but no decisions made yet.
And if either one requires, or both require land purchasing, since the land is so scarce, especially relatively in the middle of Southampton, it might be advantageous if it's possible to find a large enough parcel to actually use that parcel for both those entities.
Right, even if they weren't the same building, if they had the same
Right.
parking lot or whatever it was.
Yeah, shared a parking lot, not shared a building.
Ideally near the Greenway. If we're gonna put it all together.
This gets deeper as it goes with you, doesn't it?
You're brilliant. Anybody else have anything to add to the history or where we're at or anything?
I do have one question. I attended a couple of the meetings, not as a member of the committee, last fall. And I know there was a discussion of the architectural firm. I think they even came with a representative the last meeting who had put together the study, the Taj Mahal study that failed at town meeting. And it occurred to me, was that the only game in town? How widely did that go out to find out what other firms are knowledgeable about public safety buildings or public safety complexes? And how far did we look?
We sent out an RFP for qualified architects, and we had quite a list of companies that came and submitted to the committee, and then the committee picked that firm.
But there was $30,000 or something? There was a cost associated with who you picked. So you couldn't just pick 5 of them, you had to pick one and kind of go with them.
What do you mean, you had to pay money just to have them say, yes, we want to do it?
No, they were paid to take and do that Taj Mahal approach, if you'd say.
They were paid for the feasibility study, and that was $37,000.
And there was an RFP that went out for that, and it was, I mean, I could probably look it up, or Ed probably could look it up in the records, but I tried to keep a duplicate of whatever I worked on, so I may still have it. But there was quite a list of companies that did apply, and they were interviewed by the committee and everything else. So it was quite a process to do that.
Mm-hmm. And were they low bid?
Well, if it was an RFP, that would not have to be a low bid.
Okay.
If it was an IFB, invitation for bid, then they would have to.
Yeah,
okay.
It was an
And
RFP.
generally, those you'll do under proposals, and you want the best proposer.
Okay. Okay.
The Williamsburg public or safety complex was designed by Juster, Pope, and Fraser. It's another company out of Northampton, I think.
Cindy, send me an email, and I'll go back into my database and see if I can find what.
Well, does the whole committee want it, not just for me? I don't need it for the would I'm just asking, would it be helpful for the whole committee to see what process occurred?
I don't know.
I think it's helpful because right now, for example, when we look at Salt Hadley and Hadley, they had the exact same architect, and they work in conjunction with an organization called Lifespan, which is very focused on senior accommodations, and both towns were extremely satisfied. So I think, Westhampton's building one now, Williamsburg is, I think knowing what companies were used and the level of satisfaction, I think, is important, I think. I've heard more nightmares than positive things, so when something goes well like that, it's good to know.
Just appreciate the data that we did is it's gotta be at least 5, 6 years old now. So, that companies change, personnel change.
Right.
COVID certainly changed everything.
As we went out and considered them, I know that we're taking some road trips out to some fire stations, some other.
I have a file, which I could bring into the next meeting,
Yeah.
and we probably went to half a dozen.
They're actually in the electronic report I sent.
Was that?
They're in the electronic
Yeah.
report I sent.
Mhm.
You should have a breakdown of every fire station, police station.
Did you say you were going to send that again?
I just sent it. I sent it last week.
Oh,
And trust me, the
I
town
didn't
clerk.
get it.
I didn't get it.
I didn't get it.
Really?
I'm going to pass this around, and if everybody can write their email address on here, just to make sure we all have email addresses, okay?
And that was the other reason I sent it, was so that everybody had everybody else's email address.
Yeah.
Wow.
And
I didn't get it.
That last one out.
in the study that was done, that was only 5 to 6 years ago by this architect company, if I remember correctly, they proposed 3 possible strategies or 3 possible plans, correct? And then was the town asked to vote on one of them, the one that the committee felt was the best for their needs, or?
Yeah, I think that's the way it worked. I think that the committee and the select board decided that was the approach to take, and that's
Okay.
what went to
But
town
so
meeting.
they initially proposed in the feasibility study, I think it was 3 different possibilities. They were all behind the current fire station.
Correct.
And then one of them was selected as the best one to put forward. Yeah.
Can I say something?
Sure.
Yeah.
You know, your process, you had a process for determining which company we're gonna go with.
Mhm.
And you didn't go with the company I liked. That's why I remember it pretty well.
What company was that, remember?
I don't know. It was, I think you and I like the same one, the one that built where, because every company all had a list of
Yeah.
departments that they had built.
Yeah.
It was an older gentleman that was running it, and his daughter was taking over, and she was quite impressive. You know, she knew what she was talking about. And I've forgotten the name of it. You may have he was second choice.
Would you recognize that name if you were given the list?
If I saw the
Yeah, that would be
list.
great. I mean, that would be a way
But-
for us to relearn that name.
Ed, did you ever look in that black filing cabinet to see if there was any files left from the Public Safety Committee?
No, I just looked downstairs.
Randy, you want to step away from that and I'll take a look at it? Because I know years ago when this all started, we were shoving paperwork in there. And knowing this town, stuff gets stuck. Well, I have nothing in there. Get that out of my way.
So I'm going looking for a filing cabinet, you know where that
It was, I remember us using it, but, you know, I never was in charge of the paper file. I just kept everything electronically.
So Charlie, this might be a good time to just sort of let folks know, I mean, people have it in front of them, but I'll just go ahead and, you know, read. So the select board's hope was that we would bring in more people with finance background, bring in more people that have background in construction and engineering, and new people that can spread the word out to a new population instead of people that, you know, usually communicate more with each other. And so it hasn't been 100% approved because more edits were made at the last time, but this is why it says draft on it. But what it says is that the committee shall review all past reports from prior Public Safety Complex Building Committee. The committee shall make efforts to educate the residents of the town on the need for this facility and to understand current perception of the need, and then develop a plan in accordance with findings. Chief, I think you were out of the room when Christina made a really good suggestion that at some point along the process, it might be a good idea to have some sort of a video or open house so residents can see both buildings and see a significant need. The committee shall research and recommend 2 locations, giving priority to town-owned land to the select board. Once a location is approved by the select board, a new charge for the committee will then be issued. The committee shall assist the select board in presentations at town meetings, budget meetings, public forums, as needed. So the hope is that will, I think, in my experience, and it hasn't been as long as a lot of people in this room, the pendulum swings from renovate existing building, particularly the 2 current buildings, and new building altogether. And it seems like there's just a pendulum that's been swung a little bit back and forth. And there have been a couple attempts, you know, to move forward, and a barrier comes up. So we're hoping we can all put our heads together and kind of surmount barriers, because it's a long time.
So let me ask the group this question. Would we want to form a subgroup of maybe 3 people to reach out to Easthampton Cable Access to see if they would be willing to videotape a presentation of these 2 buildings so that they can be put on the public access channel?
I would just say, do we want to do that now, or do we want to get 3 months down the road and have this is what we're going to do instead, you know, we have a plot, we're going to meet with an engineer, just so we don't lose momentum before, if we're going to be bringing a proposal.
If we videotape now, your point's taken, and we put this together, it's going to take a couple of months to do it anyways.
Sure.
And it's videoed, or it's digitally recorded. In other words, we don't need to use it once we get it. So then we can add to it or edit it based on where this group goes.
Yeah, no, that's very true.
But I agree with Sarah that let's be sure we know what the message is. Is it just see what a decrepit condition these buildings are, or a little more framework as to where we're going with this to give people hope?
I don't disagree with you,
Yeah.
but what I'm saying is to get them filming and stuff is
Yeah.
going to take a couple of months anyways.
Change the narration as you need.
Yeah,
That's true.
I think the angle and narration is important. And it might
And that we
change
could
what
finalize.
gets videoed.
Yeah, that we could finalize the narration section
Yeah,
after we've got a direction.
yeah.
Do I hear a motion to something like this?
Sure, I'll make a motion for
Can I
that.
just point out, I had reason to be in touch with Easthampton Media for, related to the master plan implementation process, and remember the survey we did for the master plan implementation committee? And my experience with them is that they'll let anybody take videos and then they'll post them. Are you asking for their actual technical expertise?
I believe part of our agreement with them is that they're supposed to provide us some technical expertise. Ed, am I wrong with that?
Or will they charge more for that? I know they won't.
I think it's
just
part of
post
their,
it.
Well, the old rule of thumb is if you don't ask, the answer is always no. So,
right,
yeah, it's worth asking.
that's what I'm thinking. I'm just looking at getting this rolling. I'm not looking at getting a conclusion at it, I'm just looking at getting it rolling. I've put these types of videos together in the past, and it becomes a lot longer to do than you think it does.
That's right,
This
yeah.
stuff comes up, but, you know,
Yeah, and decrepit is one piece of the puzzle. The code, the safety issues are another, and I think they need to be, you know,
pointed out.
brought up. I mean, some of them are, you know, simple, like the step down in your hallway and whatever, but there's other pieces that are out there is, you know what, that fire station, and if you ever got into, you know, having cruisers inside or whatever rather than outside, but at least for the fire station, it really needs an emissions evacuation system too. And there's a number of those things, and I don't want to go into OSHA because I don't want to say what we might not be compliant on or whatever, but there are a number of those issues that really should be brought out. And the other piece that should be brought out is whether we talk $7 million or $8 million, I think if you actually added up what it would take to bring those 2 different buildings up to, shall we say, code and safety issues, you're probably talking maybe 5 to 7, if not more. So I think that needs to be brought up in this equation. You know, also, we can do this for this much, or we can do this for that much. Yeah.
So do I hear a motion on this? I just heard.
I have a question first. Is the intention to have them both together or continue to be separate?
The public safety complex is intended to be both fire and police with a common wall.
Okay, to be clear, we decided to call this committee the Public Safety Building Committee so that all options were on the table. I mean, we're interested in what people feel is the best thing for the town of Southampton. Is it to have a complex, have them be together? I mean, I think that's one of the things that we need to kind of move forward on. And I think that's what the pendulum's been swinging, has been renovate the existing buildings or build a complex that's separate on, you know, existing land, or ask for like donation or buy land. And I think we haven't been able to actually have a clear path forward. So I think that's part of it.
I'd like to know how the chiefs feel about that. Do you feel it's important that that your two facilities be together, or?
I do. I think because we can share common resources as well. And we also have we do dispatch for the town as well, and it would be nice to have the fire and the police in the same building for the dispatch.
So in your view, one building?
Yes.
And would that be the same?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's probably most cost effective that way for the town, and I know that that's a concern for the town. And I think that you know, the commonality between, you know, emergency services, I think it works well to have it combined. And we work well together, which I think is a benefit to a small town.
You now got two departments that operate on a 24-hour daily basis.
Yeah.
And it makes all the sense in the world. One is in the old town hall, and the other's in the old fire station. Put them together.
Yeah. I thought Ed's point about, you know, the fact that we could spend $5 or $6 million to renovate the two separate buildings, but it's, you know, coin the phrase, you know, it's putting a Band-Aid on a pig. You know, it's really not, you're not going to end up with a building that's going to serve for any long-term use. I mean, you know, the fire station is, what, 130 years old?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, we certainly wouldn't, you know, you wouldn't put a school in a 130-year-old building.
Yeah.
You know,
And I think if we look at what the recent fire stations have done, I mean, Easthampton demolished theirs and is building on the same site. Williamsburg demolished a school and is building on the same site. To purchase
land.
Huh?
Both of which are flat land.
Right, right. So to purchase land and then build will be extremely expensive. So most places that have been successful lately have used existing town land or demolished buildings.
Have you already talked about which of the two properties, if we were going to put them together, like would this or that be the best location?
Or another one altogether. I mean, I think that's what the goal of this committee is. One of the charges is to identify two possible locations. And if we go by what Chief Workman just said about the radius, then I think one of the things we need to do is, you know, go back and look at what are the best possible sites in the radius of this historical town hall or district, and then move from there, I think.
What about?
I think to fully answer your question, I think, Charlie, you just indicated that the old town hall parcel is not big enough.
That's correct. In fact, if you really want to go through some of the discussions of the prior committees, one of the prior committees' discussion was this highway department. There's no penalty relative to moving the highway department over to where the transfer station is. There's enough land mass there and everything else. But the problem would be is we'd be committing ourselves to building a new highway department, fire department, police department. So that went out the window in the senior center now. It just went out the window because it became obvious that there's no way we're going to see that kind of money in one
fell swoop.
Yeah. But there was discussion that the highway department garage and everything else, that area, if you took them down and they're all just basically Butler buildings, you could build a very nice public safety complex there and possibly a senior center, but you'd need a place for your highway department, which would, the only land that was available that made sense was over by the transfer station. But the reality was, when you start looking at the dollar amounts for that, it was like, we can't afford that, we'd never be able to afford that.
Is that within the radius?
It's close enough to make it not hurt.
Okay.
You mean Fulmer Road?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Well, the
close.
transfer and highways, weren't the concerns about the large trucks going uphill or?
The concerns were the fire department trucks going across the bridge and that,
Yeah.
but from the highway department point of view, they weren't emergency vehicles, so they could go down Strong Road,
Oh, yeah.
okay? But like I said, there was part of the discussions that went on. It never went anywhere, but it was part of the discussions. You have to appreciate, you got 12-plus years of committee meetings
Yeah.
of ideas that were thrown around that went on. I mean, I basically am bringing you the institutional knowledge, what was discussed and what the conclusions were.
So was it ever discussed to take any property by eminent domain?
There was, but everyone seemed to find that to be very distasteful, and everyone backed away from that. Everyone being from select board to the committee. Nobody wanted to take anybody's land. And there's another problem when you take somebody's land by eminent domain, and Ed, correct me if I'm wrong, but let's say hypothetically, we're gonna take Bill Barkham's property. We tell Bill Barkham the appraised value is X, he disagrees, we have to have another appraisal done. He doesn't agree with that, we take the property, he files a suit against us. We're now in litigation for a couple of years before this is resolved. In the meantime, we're doing nothing with that land.
Not only that,
Well,
public
you-
support is, you know, a big part of this, and that would not go over well.
Well, you can actually take possession of the land, the disadvantage, and that's why even when you use eminent domain, you would like to have come to agreement on
Yeah.
what the final cost is. The biggest one I know of around here in the last 20 or 25 years is Agawam versus Tuckahoe. And that ended up costing the town of Agawam, I think, an extra $7 million over what they thought was the fair price.
And then
They
when you-
lost that in court.
And if you look at what's happened to land prices in town in the last 2 years,
Mhm.
you know, what you're planning on paying today, 6 months from now, maybe a whole nother game.
And construction costs.
Oh, yeah.
Bill, how much land do you have?
I think you're too far out.
Bill,
We're not better shape than East Street right now.
this is pick on Bill night.
Yeah, it's okay, I got big shoulders.
I know you do.
I've been picked on before.
I know.
Well, I think, you know, it's 5:25, so I just want to be sensitive to people's time. I think it's been really, really helpful for everybody to hear all this. I think that two things
I know.
two things probably need to happen. I think it's a great suggestion to do a video, but I do agree that there should be some intention where we're showing code violations or, you know, I think that that's something that we, I don't know if we want to call Easthampton today, but I think that's a goal of the committee, I would think, would be to video both places and/or have a open house, so to speak, for the purpose of educating the public on the need. But I'm not sure that that's something right away. Does Easthampton Media have a president now?
What's that?
Do they have a leader anymore?
Yes.
Okay, because it's changed again.
So, going back to my question, is there a motion on the floor to put a subcommittee together to start looking at videotaping these buildings?
I'll make a motion, but I'm going to modify that
That's
differently.
fine, that's fine, I'm
I
just trying to get
think-
it on the table.
I move that we have a subcommittee to look at how to start educating the public about the issues related to the current two public buildings, being the fire department and the police department, and make recommendations back to this committee as to what to do. It could include videotaping, it could include touring, and it could include something else. So I move to have a subcommittee to look into these things to report back to the main committee.
I'll second.
Discussion?
I think that could be a, pretty, 1 or 2 Zoom meeting discussion, brainstorming session. I think that's a great idea.
All in favor?
Aye.
Second question, who wants to be on the committee?
I volunteer to be on the committee.
Well, we have 2.
2.
We have a large committee here. You can have more too.
I think
Well-
obviously it'd be good to have the chiefs involved.
Yeah, I think we're,
Yeah.
2 chiefs.
Yeah,
And 2
okay.
chiefs, that's 4.
Anyone else? Going
So
once?
that would be enough
Yeah,
for a
yeah.
subcommittee.
So moved.
I think, the second thing is, I think it's clear that we need to, follow the charge and come up with 2 potential pieces of land. So I think that would be, I think if people can just, I think we might need some,
You want a subcommittee on that?
no,
I can probably pull that. Now, my guesstimation of looking at the maps, that probably within a few hundred yards, that the geographical center of Southampton is the corner of Route 10 and Pomeroy Meadow Road. Is that fairly accurate?
Yes, unfortunately, the insurance company picks the fire station building, not the geographic center of the town, which makes no logic to me, but that's what it is.
But if you pick the geographical center of town, and I'm not saying that's where it's going to end up, but if you take that and say, okay, we're going to stick within half a mile or 3/4 a mile or whatever it is of that, theoretically you have, shall we say, equalized your response times, and that's what those insurance.
That's what
things
that's
are.
all about, yeah.
Right, exactly.
Well, I wouldn't mind assisting you.
Okay.
So I'm not clear, which is the center of town? Is it the
fire station.
fire station
I don't
or?
know, I'm hearing 2 different things. It sounds like geographic is different.
Corner of Route 10 and
So is that the
Pomeroy
one we're going to call the center?
I would rather that myself, but.
Well, it
the-
has to do with insurance, right?
Right,
Yeah.
well, and that comes down to how much of a move is going to affect how many people. See,
Right.
part of the problem that's happening here is, we're looking at this half-mile radius based on the fire station, but if you look at the outgrowth of what's occurring in this community,
Yeah,
our outgrowth is not conducive to that center being the fire station. Our actual new growth in this town is more focusing north and east.
but if the whole point of this is response time from the fire department is located there.
Right.
So regardless of where anybody else lives in town, if the insurance is based on the distance from the rigs to their home, why would it be anything other than where the fire station is?
Yeah, it's a good question, probably worth asking an insurance person,
Right.
really, to get some clarification of that. Because, I mean, I'm sure all the rates now are based on the fire station,
Yeah,
but it certainly makes sense to go geographic location of the town,
yeah,
because you want
right.
equidistant to everybody.
Does
Just-
anyone here have connections or have any connection with anybody that does homeowners insurance?
Well, it's,
We all have homes.
So those insurance ratings actually come from a different agency.
Who is it?
I
I
can't
think
remember, but.
it's in the report.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'll find out.
Okay,
Yeah,
And I think they like update them every 3 years or
Yeah.
something like that. so.
okay.
But if Ed and I
That's what insurance
take a look
people
at the
would
land
like.
mass and try to
Yeah.
figure out parcels that are workable, at least it'll give us something to start with.
Okay. I'm the liaison to the assessors too, so we have a meeting Monday. I'm happy to help out looking at maps, whatever.
All right.
Thanks.
If it were to be moved in that direction, then that would completely rule out the Fulmer Road parcel.
Right.
Well,
Right.
I don't see the Farmer Road parcel
Well,
happening. It's just-
everything's open at this first
Yeah.
meeting, I would think.
Yeah.
We're just learning, I know you from past experience, but I think I, as a new member, and perhaps some other members, would like to just know that that's town-owned and currently is within the radius of option.
How many acres are there?
Again, I emailed everybody a report, you can look at the report, I don't remember off the
Okay,
top of my
all right.
head, Randy. There's, I mean, I was in Superior Court today looking at a parcel in Wendell.
It's
I don't want to take and give you the numbers
Okay,
for the
yeah.
parcel in Winslow. I'll be in the town of Washington looking at a parcel of 300-some acres next week.
It's straight.
It's straight. See, look at that, how easy that was.
I was gonna say, my memory was, I thought that,
Yeah.
going back to that past study or whatever, that the ideal to fit it on was somewhere around 3.5 acres or something.
Right,
Yeah.
that's why the current police station just went off. There was no way that would ever happen. No. We did a lot of homework on those years
Yeah.
ago. Just, so is the committee in favor of that?
Okay.
Just be sure I understand, what are we in favor of? Ed and you looking
I'm
at
gonna
parcels?
look at parcels within the
With
half-mile
you.
hub of the center, the geographic center of town, to get some ideas of what might be available.
And it's half mile.
So that would be the, bring a list to the greater.
Yeah, so
communities.
for the next meeting, you'll bring a list, or we'll bring a list of all the town-owned land within half-mile radius of town, of here or thereabouts.
Might break it down into 2 different lists of
Okay.
all the town-owned land on one, and maybe
Yeah.
Oh,
all
additional.
the other privately owned land that meets that criteria. on
Okay,
another.
that's a good idea. And we'll have it for the next meeting, and then the rest of us will put together, we'll set up a meeting to brainstorm on public
Education.
education.
What number of acres is considered optimal?
I would
for-
look at 3.5 plus.
Right, I'd start at 3.5, and I'd do the plus just in case there's some interest of
Yeah, I mean,
adding
let's say,
council on aging to it.
right, I mean, somebody says 4 acres and we can put the council on aging next door, then why not?
That land that is at the corner of Pomeroy Meadow and Route 10 that was
The Dunkin' Donuts,
proposed
yeah.
for something like a Dunkin' Donut, I don't remember how many acres that.
It was a very odd lot.
Two,
Yeah.
I think only
There's two.
Oh,
Yeah, there's 2 lots there.
2 lots, but I think in total it wasn't much more than 2 acres.
Okay.
That's
I
my
think-
understanding.
I think we looked at that originally as a committee and saw it was too small to do anything with. I mean, there's a lot of parcels that were looked at that we didn't really document because they just didn't work, so nobody bothered writing up a report on them.
Okay.
And if it did work, I might actually add to the cost of building, because I would probably think if that were the area, that we would probably be, need to actually have a real traffic light in town instead of a blinking light at that point in time. And those aren't cheap, those are like $100,000 or so.
We were lucky to get the blinking light.
Yeah.
Okay.
So let me go back to the first,
Where's that piece of paper that people were writing their email?
The back
Sorry.
is, I have a question, if I may. I have not been sworn in on this committee. Does that mean I am not on this committee? And Don's the same situation.
that is a question you need to ask the select board and the town administrator, because I don't know.
Okay,
I know you were not appointed
okay,
to the committee.
okay. That's fine.
You're welcome. We extended inclusion and anybody that wants to be in this meeting. Your input obviously today was very valuable. Our hope was to get people, it was heavily firefighters. And so we really wanted to try to get historical and finance and construction. So we have 2 people that are in construction, and when we talk about codes, we'd be very interested to hear what you have to say. And when we start going to the point of getting a feasibility study and dealing with an architect, it's going to be important to have a little bit more input from people that are in building trades or have a history of that, I think.
Yeah, the more the merrier for input at this point.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
That helps.
Yeah, but you can't come and be not part of this committee or an official part of the committee.
Or you wouldn't be able to vote, but you'd still be able to.
Okay.
Well,
No,
Ed's an ex
That's okay.
officio member too,
Yeah,
so you're
I-
welcome to be here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Bill, I don't see anybody on this committee telling you you can't speak.
No, that I know, Charlie.
Yeah,
I mean,
But I have been on it for 12 years.
yeah.
don't remind me, I was there with you.
So, okay, that's all right.
Well, the next question I have is, when does this committee want to meet? What days and what times?
I was just gonna say, we're gonna appoint officers soon, but we can do.
I'm gonna do the officers at the end.
Last, because I tried and it
Because
didn't work.
it doesn't stick, it just keeps sticking. So, I mean, are Mondays okay with everyone?
Is 4:30 okay, or do
Yeah, it's
people have jobs
4:30.
to do, you know?
Board of Assessors meet either Monday or
4:30.
Tuesday.
I can't
but-
do any earlier than 4:30,
Yeah.
but I can be here for 4:30. I don't know if other folks.
So long as it's a different day than the assessors, who often meet at 4 o'clock on Mondays.
Well, I think the next thing we gotta start doing is using the selectmen's meeting room, not this room.
Yeah.
Only because if we get everybody in here, it's just gonna get tighter and tighter. But,
Yeah, so long as it can be recorded too. I think that's,
This one's being recorded, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
this one is, but I
In
don't
this
know.
room, you can record
What about
on
the,
your own.
what about the selectmen's meeting room?
No, you can't do it on your own. You have to have it done from the Easthampton Media Office.
New message is received from Pamela Kaniecki. New message is received from Pamela Can.
Turn your mind down.
All I want to do is to get the calendar, and the last thing I'm getting is that. It's like I got 16 texts and 16 emails.
Well, we can alter this room just as easily
Yeah,
as
yeah,
the
this
first
can be
floor
set
meeting room by
up.
bringing up tables, they tee off of it so everybody can sit
Yeah.
around.
So,
This is conducive to a good interaction. The select board meeting room is not as easy,
yeah,
in my
I
opinion.
agree.
so do you want to meet once a month, twice a month? I'd like to meet twice a month myself, but
At this point, if we can do twice a month, I think would be
Okay,
better.
well,
At least the first couple of times to get some traction, I think would be a good idea.
so March 21st?
When does assessors-
I just don't know if the assessors are meeting.
It's all over the place because they're on the PA.
That's Monday.
Yeah, but I don't know if this is going to conflict with the assessors.
The assessors are meeting on next Monday, the 14th.
So if we meet the 21st,
Yeah, I'm away, but I don't need to be here for the next one, I mean.
4:30? Okay? All right. So now,
that date again?
March 21st, Monday, 4:30 PM here.
Thank you.
And what I'm going to do is send everybody an email of the minutes from the last time, so that when we meet again, we'll have those minutes, and I don't know if you'll have the others ready, but if you do, you know.
I will.
And if you're missing somebody's email, just send it to
It's
me.
yours.
You're missing me?
It's the only one I'm missing. What are you?
KaneckiC@yahoo.com. Hey, I'm surprised you're missing
If
me.
you want those
Oh,
minutes
the,
electronically, I have them.
I'll just scan them and send them.
The
No.
documents that he, or the email
Okay.
that he sent out to the committee last week.
Could you send me the email you sent out last week, the one with the plots and stuff? 'Cause I did not get it. I'm sorry.
No, in fact, your particular email, I got an email back from the town clerk, I didn't send it to you, and then she sent me an email back, oh, I'm sorry, I did see you did send it to you. So somebody else verified that you got it. So I don't know what you did with it. Do you think George threw it away?
Let's blame George.
Just thinking, you know.
Just so you know, that's on tape, Robert.
Nice meeting
It was done with love, George.
you. Could you send it to me again?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Me too.
All right. So I'm going back to the first question. We need to reform this committee. We need a chair, a vice chair, and a clerk. I think we have a clerk.
Oh, wait, I said today.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Don't run out now, Bill.
Thank you, Bill.
So I'm taking nominations for chair for this committee. It would be,
Does anyone here have experience as chair? Do you?
Not necessarily as a chair, I mean,
Or leading a group of people? I don't, I'm sorry, I don't yet know your names, but Sarah, I know your name.
I was going to nominate
And
Sarah.
Barbara.
We need some young people, so.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, I'm going to nominate Sarah for
Okay,
Chair.
I guess, to be frank, I would need to know a little bit more about the responsibilities associated with that position.
Basically, the chair takes and sets the meeting, posts it on the internet, and basically sets up the agenda as to what the discussion's going to be during the meeting. The chair also manages the meeting and oversees how it operates. If you would like, I have a manual that's sent on what chairs do and don't do.
Okay, I mean, I have some idea from being on the planning board, I just wanted
And the other
to.
thing is, we could also, at least for a month or two, do a co-chair situation. I mean, I think that would be good mentoring anyway. Because, we're just happy you're here, you haven't been on a lot of committees, we're grateful you're part of this, so we don't want to put you on a spot. I think it would be helpful. I mean, I'm not going to be able to be at the next meeting, but I'm hoping maybe she's chair of open space, he's been plenty of chairs. I mean, we can all help with that if it's easier for you.
Okay. Sure, I mean, I'm definitely interested and excited about the prospect of the facility. I just don't want to get it over my head either, I suppose.
Would it be better if I ended up, and I'm sticking my neck out, but be the vice chair? And that way there, you could bounce stuff at me?
It's totally up to you. I mean, I think if it's the agenda, I kind of see where we're going. I don't want you to do something you weren't coming here planning to do either.
No, you can be the vice chair.
Okay, I just make you sound like you wanted to say.
I do want, I never get to sit over there, never. I don't know what it even feels like.
Is there anybody else though that would have an interest in doing?
Sarah, you'll do fine. Trust me.
Sarah, you will absolutely do fine.
We'll all help you.
I think we should point out that Sarah's also an engineer, so she has a
Oh, all right.
Construction engineer, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that puts you in the background and feels perfect for this.
That seals it.
Yeah.
Done. All in favor?
Aye.
Done deal. Congratulations, your first campaign and you won.
And then Lucy can give you, or Charlie can give you some guidance on how to post it on My Town Government, or I can do that as well.
Okay.
I can give you some
It's
guidance.
really easy.
Yeah, it's very
Okay.
straightforward.
Yeah, once you do it once and you save it on your computer, then there's
Yeah.
nothing to
We
it.
can talk
Okay.
about that.
It's just really important for open meeting law that it be posted at least 48 hours in advance.
Yes,
It
okay.
won't
Otherwise,
post
you'll get
unless
endless
it's.
emails reminding you about it.
What I'll do is I'll post this coming meeting and share the agenda with you,
Okay.
and then you tell me if you're comfortable with it, and then we'll just put it on the web.
Okay, all right.
Have you done open meeting law training? Have you done that?
I have not.
Okay, that's also probably available to the clerks.
Yeah,
Okay.
Lucy, the town clerk will let you know
Yeah.
that. It's all online.
Okay. Open meeting law.
If you're not sure about something, you have plenty of, there's the three of us here. You
That's
can
right,
just,
yeah.
you know.
Lots of people.
I know where
So,
Cindy lives.
vice, do I hear anything, nominations for vice chair?
I would like to nominate this lovely lady right here.
Christina Manson.
Yeah, what are the responsibilities of that position? Just
You
to take
become
over?
chair.
Just take over, she's not here.
Yeah.
It's actually the easiest position.
Sure, I would accept that.
Thank you.
All in
All in
favor?
favor?
We have a motion and a second.
Oh,
Mr.
I
Chair.
second it.
I'm not the chair anymore.
Barbara made the motion.
I made the motion. Don't smile at me like that.
I'm not smiling.
I know.
So was it voted? I mean, there was a
It was-
second.
Yeah,
No,
Made by
yeah.
Barbara and seconded by Cindy.
And then voted by the committee and then challenged by the town administrator.
Who nominated Sarah? You did, right, Barbara? And who seconded that one?
I thought you did.
I thought
Did
you
I?
did,
Yeah.
At least that's what you planned.
It's very difficult to do two
All right.
things at once. like
I'm
that.
constantly seconding things.
That's what happens when you're taking the minutes, you lose track of it.
Well, yeah.
Okay, so it's, all right, great. And then clerk.
Clerk, I nominate Cindy Palmer.
Second?
All in
I'll help you with that too, Cindy. I think getting minutes done, there was a lot of work.
See,
Do you
That's okay.
accept the nomination?
And you seconded it? Yeah, I'm happy to help.
but you see what I'm doing? This is what you're doing now. Now you take it and ask them for a
But
vote.
she's been in a town meeting, she knows how to do that.
All right,
Okay.
all in favor? Cindy for clerk?
Now, if you get somebody rowdy, you can ask the police department to remove them as chair.
Good to
So
know.
should I leave now?
That's up to you.
Good job.
Well, that was a lot of.
Now you ask, is there any other business before the committee?
Yeah, I just have a question. Did you say this is in fact a draft?
Yes, because it has to be officially signed off on, because I think there are last minute edits.
Well, I mean, half of them are correct. The fact that it changed to make me an ex officio non-voting member
Yeah, that was-
is absolutely correct. But the simplified vote to, because of me becoming a non-voting, to make a fifth at large,
Yeah.
John went off on a bit of a
Right.
long piece,
Yeah.
so, I mean, so
Mhm,
I'm
make
gonna
sure
have
you got on.
to, I'm gonna have to read or listen to that
Okay.
again to see. Because I know he kind of made it so that, okay, if any position actually becomes vacated during this, that anyone at that point should be able to fill in. So that is the point that hasn't been finalized.
Okay.
Have an extra copy of the charge?
It's right
They
here,
were
Christina.
all on the table.
It's
Again,
right here.
it's,
And this is the agenda for today too.
Okay, thank you very much.
This is good.
yeah, this has really been, I hope, does anybody have any questions though? Any, John, do you?
Yeah, I'm just kind of wondering, I read all the material that you sent out, Charlie, all 167 pages plus, no, I skimmed through it, but why now? What, is there a feeling of the committee that the iron is hot and it's time to strike, or?
I can tell you my opinion. We're looking at all kind of federal infrastructure money becoming available. And I think it's time to get ahead of this, because I suspect that in the next year or so, we're gonna see this coming through the state. So even though we may be looking at a $10 million complex, we might be able to sweeten some of this with a few $1 million. That's my opinion.
I think there's also some overriding just with OSHA standards and stuff that we haven't really addressed.
You give me that look at.
No, I'm actually not looking at you, so,
You looking at the blank screen?
yeah.
Okay.
The American Rescue Fund Act, we already are, have gotten will get $1.8 million in town. So a survey went out to the residents asking for their priority, and it was just reported on at the select board meeting last Tuesday night. The number one concern of the town is broadband, number two is premium pay, and then there are a lot of other ones. We haven't gotten 100% clarification that any of these funds could be used towards the public safety, although you would think so. So we were hoping that at least, an updating of the feasibility study or something, we would be able to use either infrastructure funds or American Rescue Plan funds.
Thanks.
So we're trying to get clarification on that.
Speaking of the prior feasibility study for this parcel here, given that that was so costly, Ed, wouldn't you assume that that has been filed somehow? I know it was compressed into a PowerPoint, but that all the material that the architect did for that has to be on file somewhere. Would I be correct to assume that, given that
I
it is
never
37?
assume anything because of the issues with assuming. And that was before I got here, so.
If it's available, I'd be curious to see it as well.
Well, I'm very curious, and we paid $37,000 for it. I can't, do you know if you have it on file, or you, Chief?
I would have to see what I
I'll
have.
have to check. I don't
There was
believe
a
I do,
booklet
but
that-
I'll certainly check.
You are
Thank-
chair.
thank
I know that I
You
have the
contact
site
that company as
analysis.
chair and ask
You
them.
do have it for that? Well, could you bring that?
I can bring that in, yeah. I actually did that site analysis.
Oh, you did?
did?
Oh,
That
I was
is-
wondering when you said you had it, if that was the case. but-
That is.
Yeah, that would be
Are
really
you
helpful.
a civil engineer, is that?
Yes.
Oh. And
Awesome.
you said you have it?
Pardon?
You said you have the
I can
analysis?
get it from work, yes.
Okay.
I'm retired, but I still can get in
Yeah, that'd be, if you can send it to the group,
Mark,
that'd be
where are you
awesome.
retired from?
Berkshire Design Group.
Okay.
You're Mark, okay.
So when you say that you want the data, I mean, that's AutoCAD drawings, you want some full-size drawings, or?
I was personally curious to see the report. All I've seen is the PDF, or not the PDF, the PowerPoint presentation, and in the PowerPoint, there's all these snips of different,
Concepts.
yeah, different concepts, different layouts. I'm sure it came over from your firm as
Yeah.
like a 200-page, did you do it?
Yeah, essentially, we weren't the architect, we weren't the prime on there. The architect hired us to do the
Oh,
site
okay.
portion of it, so I'm only familiar with the site portion of it.
Oh,
They
okay,
would give us a footprint, we would try to work it with them and to develop different site concepts and the costs associated with that.
okay. I was personally curious to see how much of the cost too at that point was rock excavation versus the building itself. I mean, because I know there's been talk that the excavation and foundation was a big cost, but what are we talking?
So I heard 1 million of it
Okay,
was excavation, but I don't know if that, this is all just what I've heard.
Yeah.
I guess,
Yeah.
Well, I think some effort should be put into finding that feasibility study.
Yeah.
It's
Mark,
very
anything-
important to have.
Yeah, I can
Anything you
contact the architect.
And that wasn't that long ago.
Pull us some of that data.
That's right, they would have a copy of it.
Because they actually hired an outside cost analysis to do, we broke down our site and they did the building, so
Great.
I can research and see what we have.
Yeah, that would be
Thanks.
wonderful.
Yeah, that's great. The one thing that I noticed as I scanned it was, the PowerPoint presentation, was that it listed every aspect that was needed in the complex was designated a certain number of square feet. And I wondered at a certain point, it would be great if if the two chiefs would review that and see where that could be pared down some from your opinion, because as you refer to it, it was more than was absolutely necessary. And
Yeah, I think as a group, we could probably do that. Also,
Yeah.
just because I think it included some community spaces and
Yeah,
some things
right.
like that. And I think
Just so you know, that design was based on a 50-year growth of the town.
Yeah,
So some of the spaces in there were built in purposely
for expansion.
for expansion.
Yeah. So I would think this group would want to understand that as well, because I think it is prudent to look at it and say, okay, we don't want to just outgrow it in a year.
Yeah.
No, of course not, but there
Yeah.
might be areas.
Oh, absolutely,
Both
yeah,
agree
and-
that it was more than necessary.
Yeah, having
I'm heading
done
out.
this multiple times.
Push the
different,
red button.
Public safety
It's
facilities.
all yours.
Typically, the architect will come in and they'll interview the police chief, the fire chief, and the residents and say, what do you absolutely have to have, and what would you like to have? And then the architect will come back and then, here's your, what I'd like to have, and it's $20 million. Here's what I think I absolutely need, it's 15 million. Well, let's cut that down to what we can.
Right.
So-
Well, that was one of the reasons, that's one thing we have to be very conscious of, is to get it in at a budget that's going to be accepted by the town. And we know that the last complex was not, so we need to bring it down to within.
I know Westhampton really made a bare bones
Yeah.
in their.
The whole second floor is not even
Yeah, and they were
planned.
talking about steel, and the
Yeah.
architect was pushing, no, I want, something more sustainable, and the Westhampton pushed back and got a bare bones, but they have a nice facility,
Yeah.
and it's
Yeah.
definitely improvement over what they had.
And
Yeah.
Williamsburg as well.
Yes.
That is a facility that will have 3 double bays, 3 double deep bays, and their facility was 5.1 million, and that included tearing down the school, so the demolition, so. Yeah, I mean, that's all part of the long process, but.
Yeah, and I think the base
You-
curve is
Yeah.
expensive for office.
I think first step, like you say, is developing the public support, and not to repeat what we've done, but we've got to go through, develop public support, and then choose how we're gonna do it next time. We're gonna go through the same process, hiring an
Yeah.
architect, do feasibility study, but I think we have to lay the groundwork for that before we get to there.
Yeah.
Would it be true that if this becomes the priority spot again, that a great deal of the feasibility study could just be updated rather than redone, that cost that we've already expended of $37,000, that would be diminished greatly by updating the feasibility
Yeah, I
study.
guess, the biggest thing we went through, I think there were like, the town saw was 5 options. We went through 40 options to get down to 5. We can revisit that and see what makes sense. I mean, there were a lot of criteria. We had the hidden stream, there's wetland setbacks, there's riparian zones, turning radius, and the 2-access, safety access, 2 accesses or 1 access on the road. And a lot of criteria when we get into the nitty-gritty of the site. Again, it's sort of different steps of the concept, where we're going to put it.
But it was all worked out for that at one
Right.
point. It was all worked out to a satisfactory end.
And we could take that and say, we can't do the 10 million, hire the architect to crank it down to whatever it is.
Right.
I'm being myopic. In my view, the site sort of dictates what the cost is going to be for the site. You have to get the access in, you have to get the grading in.
Right.
And grading became a big issue on this site here, trying to get from here up to the upper level, so we have a sally port for the police, but we still wanted to drive through for the fire department, rather than the same, straight in and back out, staging areas. It's all part of site analysis.
Yeah, drive through makes perfect sense for fire trucks, that's for sure. It's a lot easier than 1 axis.
Okay, so before our next meeting, you guys are gonna have a subcommittee meeting on talking about a potential video and options for that. Is that
What
something?
does that mean? Oh, the video?
Time's up.
No,
Fire
it's a fire tone.
Oh,
6 o'clock.
6 o'clock tone, so it's just a test tone.
okay.
Did not know that.
It's a school bell. We're all dismissed.
Thankfully, you're here.
Oh, it's funny. Sounds good.
That's fine. And Ed, you and Charlie are gonna pull up a list of lots, and then maybe anything, Mark, you could pull up, and I can see if I can reach out to the design firm as well, and anything we can gather, and then if folks wanna just start thinking about it and take a look at what Charlie's already sent out. Is there anything else before, I know it's 6 o'clock, is there anything else before
No,
we break?
great. Thanks, everybody.
I move to adjourn.
I was gonna say motion to adjourn.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Thank you. John, do you know what, maybe before you go, we can just kind of figure out when we can do Zoom. You know that in Walpole, where we both have connections, the fire station is separate, but the police station is with the senior center.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, it's off the center too, it's strange.
I mean, any combination works.
All of them were new, Mark. All of them were new. At the same time, so I'm not thinking that, anyone's gonna take over another one.
Yeah, and I'm open to any workshop, I mean, honestly, whatever would work.
I know.
I just, if you don't mind, I'm gonna put it in the minutes.
They put like building inspector and something like post inspection.
Wow.
Inspection
Yeah.
services.
Mark, I'll take a look as well, but do you remember the architect who, or was like the prime on that for the design?
Central one-stop shop.
I can look at that.
For not so much.
Did you read my question about using the senior center? Did you see my email today about using the senior center? Can that be used on a Saturday for a town meeting?
That'd be awesome.
It's not a big
I'd be
deal.
curious, like, if you
Well, if you're looking for the senior center, you really have to check with Joan.
I'll just check with her. I was told by Janet Kane to check with you.
I will have to approve it, but you gotta check with them to see if the date is available.
Oh, but it's possible if the date's available. Thank you.
Yeah, that would, thank you.
I agree with Sharon.
So I'm in the middle of midterms, and then next week I'm leave, I'm going on vacation. So, I don't know if I take over this if I make it, so. So in terms of like meeting, I don't know what both works for you folks, but my time is a little bit too tight on that.
Was it,
I can do Monday afternoon.
Mark? Yes.
I board next Monday afternoon. Yeah.
The 14th?
Jim Hannaford, that was the...
I had Board of Assessors at
One of the newer guys.
Friday.
So like, I have a 4 o'clock meeting myself, so like, 1
3?
or 2.
Or even earlier, that's okay.
Earlier's
2
fine for
o'clock.
me. 2 o'clock?
not sure.
No, is that what you-
It's not paid attention.
No.
I still do all my,
But
I got paid for like reading it. I
This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.